So the Ruger Single 6 started manufacture back in 1953 and is still in production today, and the Ruger Wrangler started production back in 2019, and obviously they're still being produced today. So let's start with the basics. They are both single action revolvers, and basically what that means is you have to cock the hammer back every time you want to shoot it, and every time you cock the hammer it'll rotate the cylinder over to the next chamber so you can fire the round. Hammer comes down, fires out the round, cock it again, and then it'll rotate the next round in position to fire. Now right there, just in that very basic process, there are two very noticeable differences between the two of them. So I'm gonna take the Wrangler, put it up real quick. We're gonna take the Single 6 here, and this is more closely fashioned after the original Colt Single Action Army. Now Ruger, you know, they made their own creative differences and stuff, but it is very close. So what you're gonna have is your safety notch. So you can safely carry 6 rounds in this thing with that notch right there. Otherwise, you risk short stroking, dropping the hammer on the rim of the cartridge and setting it off. So if you're gonna carry it with 6, have that safety notch on. The next one is gonna be the loading notch right there, and that will allow the cylinder to rotate freely. Load it up, you'll open up the loading gate, load the cartridges in, and then of course taking it to full cock, which will enable it to fire, right? So that's the Single 6. Now let's have a look at the very new Wrangler here. So it does not have a safety notch here, and there's a reason for that. It does not have a loading notch on there, as you can see. It does have the full cock because it's single action to enable it to fire. Now the thing about the Wrangler is the cylinder will freely rotate after you open up the loading gate, just like that. And as you probably hear right there, there are no index clicks like you heard on the Single 6. So I actually like it when it clicks for the indexing, and you can actually feel it when you're rotating this thing. This thing freely rotates, as opposed to the Single 6, it'll index for each notch that it moves to. I like that a whole lot more, makes it a whole lot easier to load. But anyway, so the only way for this thing to be loaded is for you to open up that loading gate. Close it up, she's ready to rock and roll, and you can see it locked up. Now, there's a reason there's no safety notch, and that is when you put it on the full cock, you can see it. There's a transfer bar right there, and that's a new invention that came around for most revolvers now, that basically you can safely carry this with 6 without any risk of short stroking or dropping it, so the hammer will knock that firing pin forward and set off the primer. Very nice feature. So, interesting fact about the Single 6. This is an old model 3-screw Single 6, manufactured from 1953 to 1973. These do not have the transfer bar. So yes, you can drop this thing. You can short stroke this and set off the primer. And they corrected that in 1973 when they started putting the transfer bar in there, and that was no longer an issue. So yeah, that's definitely a big change from the old and the new. And as you can see with the cocking and loading system. So let's look at a couple other differences between the two of them. So for one, the Single 6 is all steel except for the grips that are wood, and the Wrangler is made from, I believe it's an aluminum composite materials. I think it's called Zamac or something. I'm not 100%, but I know it's not steel. The only thing that's steel on this is the cylinder here. That's it. This is all cheap pot metal essentially, not this. Now there's a big difference in the weight too. The steel definitely weighs more than this thing. Now when you're looking at the two of them, this one's obviously way older, this one's obviously way newer. The quality differences are definitely present. Okay, the fit and finish on this are much better than this. These are mass produced. I'm not calling it junk, but they're not nearly the quality of the original Single 6. And that's just something that you're gonna have with the older guns. The manufacturing process was way different. It wasn't as simple as, you know, stamping it and sending it down the line. Some of these things had to be hand-fitted parts. So yeah, you're gonna get a whole lot more quality from the older stuff than the new ones. But the new stuff is still pretty darn effective. Now you're gonna see right here, the grips are very different. This is just cheapo plastic grips versus these nice fitted wood grips on there. The Ruger symbol is still gonna be on there, but it's a little bit nicer, and this one's just stamped into the plastic. Boring, right? Now another big difference that you're gonna see are the sights. Now as far as the sights go, this is a little bit closer to the original Single Action Army than the Single 6 is gonna be. This has got dovetail drift adjustable sights on the rear, This one is just a fixed notch sight, and they both have fixed front sights on there. So this one, you can't really adjust it. You're kind of screwed if this thing doesn't shoot straight. This one, yeah, you can adjust the rear sight and you'll get it to shoot straight just fine. Now, one thing that might come into play when I'm comparing the accuracy is the barrel length. Okay, on the single 6, it is slightly longer than the Ruger Wrangler here. Now this one's closer to 5, this one's 4 3/4. You know, not much of a difference. Is it really gonna make a difference? I don't know, we're gonna find out. So basically what we're gonna be doing today is I'm gonna be shooting the two of them separately, obviously, from the standing position at 7 yards and 12 yards. I'm gonna do it two-handed on both of them, and then I'm gonna do single-handed on both of them at both yard lengths. And then at the end, I'm just gonna head you guys off at the pass. I am gonna do rested shooting in the two of them to get a proper comparison. Okay, I get a lot of complaints that you can't do a proper comparison without doing a rested shoot because there's just too much margin for error. And I agree with that. I'm human, humans have errors, we have bad habits, we shake, you know, we get distracted, all that stuff. So at the end, I'm gonna compare the two of them with two different types of ammunition from a bench rest at 7 and 12 yards, and we're gonna see how the two of them do. But to start off, for the bulk of the video, we're gonna be shooting the two of them just like any other average shooter will be doing, and that's gonna be doing offhand from 7 to 12 yards and see how the two of them do. Now for the generic standing testing, we're gonna be using these Remington Thunderbolt 22s. These things are cooking at 1255 feet per second, and I mean, I got a bulk pack of 500 here. Remingtons are not my favorite ammunition. They're not, they're dirty, they're somewhat inconsistent, but it's what I got. Now, when we do the comparative testing later on, I'm gonna be matching up these higher velocity 1255 Thunderbolts to these CCI standard velocity going 1070 feet per second. Now, I do like CCI, they are more consistent, and you know, they work pretty darn well. But we're gonna see if the higher velocity makes a difference to the lower velocity. I don't know if it will or not, we're gonna see, but that's gonna be tested from the bench rest, so we'll get maximum information in that method. But for the bulk of the video, we're gonna be shooting the Thunderbolts. So let's get started off. So first, I'm gonna go with the Ruger Single 6 at 7 yards, and I'm gonna be shooting it two-handed. So let's get this thing loaded up. Now, from prior experience, I know with these Thunderbolts, it does like to go a little bit high, but I'm not so concerned with the point of aim, point of impact aspect of it, but more so much the groups. The ammo velocity situation, that could be resolved by experimenting with different velocities, different weights. Between the Thunderbolts and the CCIs, they're both gonna be 40 grain, so there's equality as far as that goes. It's just the velocity that makes the difference. So with these particular revolvers, is it gonna fly a little bit higher? Is it gonna fly a little bit lower? You know, we're gonna find out. So there's 6 right there. So let's take some shots.